Thanks, Web. Yes.
Yes, she without roles as a business, why not have it? There's no problems. Yeah, yes. Nothing like last time. He does it. He's so Gemini.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the meeting of the South Standing Committee at Shirehall today. We are not expecting a fire drill. In the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather outside at the front of the building. I would like to tell you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Could I also ask you please to ensure all mobile phones are switched off? In order to those watching the live stream know who is speaking, could members and officers introduce themselves prior to speaking? To ensure members of this committee and all points raised by the public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you that I must not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public and not a public meeting. And as such, if behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. I will now ask members and officers to introduce themselves, please. Start with you.
Councillor Christian Lee, representing Bridge North East, Council Office.
Councillor Hilary Love, representing Church Stretton and Craven Arms.
Councillor Nick Hignett, Ray Valley Ward. Nigel Lumby, Councillor for All Brighton.
Councillor Edward Towers, representing Wem Rural and Wixel, and substituting for what's his name?
Councillor Caroline Stagnall, representing Broseley.
Richard Hoffer, representing Cleag. Andy Boddington, Councillor Ludlow North.
Councillor Rachel Connolly, Bridge North West and Tassley, duty for Councillor Tony Parsons.
Donna Lawley, Developing Highways Manager. Louise Evans, Principal Planning Officer.
Mike Rigby, Public Practice Officer in Minerals and Waste.
Mike Hayes, Consultant Planner.
Emma Green, Area Planning Manager.
David Evans, representing Craven Arms in Shropshire, and also chair this committee.
Kim Brown, Solicitor.
Nikki Marshall, Committee Officer.
Thank you. We have apologies for absence. We have Tony Parsons, represented by Rachel Connolly. Robert Tyndall is substituted by Edward Towers, and Edward Potter is really rang in sick, so he won't be attending the meeting. Item number 2, confirm the minutes of the last meeting held on the 24th of September. Could I have a proposal for the minutes, please?
Proposed, Chair.
Thank you. Secondly, please. Thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Public questions. We have no public questions. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, please. Members are reminded they must declare any disclosure of pecuniary interest and other registrable and non-registrable interests in any matter being considered at this meeting. That's out in Appendix B in the Members' Code of Conduct, and considered they should leave the room prior to items being considered. Further rights can be sought by the monitoring officer in advance of any disclosure of pecuniary interest. Good, thank you. Move on to item number 5, which is the caravan on board Shirehall, and that's presented by Mike David. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. This proposal has been before committee April 2023. Members may recall there was a site visit undertaken at the time. At the time, planning permission was granted for a year on the basis of it being a temporary consent, but also a personal consent, and that was to allow officers to look at alternative provision. What we're finding in particular was that with regards to CS12, which deals specifically with gypsy and traveller provision, was that we were losing quite a lot of appeal, but we didn't have alternative sites for gypsy and travellers. The issue here was that obviously the site was within Greenbelt, and we were looking for a site outside of the Greenbelt. And during a search, we've managed to, in conjunction with Bradford Estates, we've managed to identify a potential alternative site to relocate to, which is outside the Greenbelt. So when we look at the application itself was for 4 gypsy and traveller pitches, which included 4 static caravans, 4 parking spots for mobile caravans, and also 4 day rooms as well. So the application now, when we've looked at what's gone on in terms of appeal decisions, we've decided that previously where we refused the application on a number of grounds, we feel that the only reason we could use now would be those Greenbelt grounds. What we're finding, as I said, is that the inspectorate have been quite clear in terms of that, and along with national planning policy and also the planning policy for gypsy and travellers, is that the Greenbelt is almost sacrosanct in terms of not allowing those types of uses in there. They're considered inappropriate. Now we've got an alternative site. We've moved towards recommending reviews for this, and also to seeking authorisation for enforcement action. But that will be predicated on the basis that we've worked with the applicant and the other landowner to facilitate the move to the alternative site. Therefore, the recommendation is for refusal at present as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We have one speaker on this, and it is Mr. Quinn, the applicant. Would you like to come forward, sir?
How are you, everyone?
Yeah, there's the right hand button on the microphone.
Yes.
And you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
How are you, everyone? All right? I'm just basically, it's for my kids and for my family deciders. You know, I've nowhere to go. And as you know, for discriminations, what has been happening for travellers and community for many years, or we go along the side of the road, we can't wait anywhere. So where can we stay? You know, and when you go down to the next door neighbour, but one for me, which is Mr. Number 33, Mr. Cooper. He's built a house without planning permission next door, but one for me. But that's irrelevant to this side, as you know, that I'm trying to say, because he's works for Little Dawley's, the chairman of Little Dawley Council. You know, and then you got RSM Commercials as the cross facing this here, and it's always had lorries up and down this one road. That hard standing, it's been there for a numbers of years on that property, you know, and which here everyone knows the truth, but they don't want to actually tell the truth. If that home you're looking at is cream there, we can't say it's black, because we know it's cream. It's been local postmen have done that area for in the 60s and the 70s, which Mike Davis himself here had a copy of the letter saying he's used at that place and he's remembered that place has always had statics. There's even Google Earth photograph recognition to shows that that place had in 2008. It's even had caravans, machineries and that, and it was part of a long way distance with Don Williams, Arthur Williams, that owned that yard and owned that, and that was all part of a business one time ago. Yes, I know it's in the Greenbelt surround, and I understand that. But where can I go? I got kids who's going to Shifnham Primary School. You know, this is my life. If I go back on the road, the kids will have no education. And to be honest and truthful, I'm just leaving it up to you. You know, we have a lot of discrimination going on in Manchester at the moment for gypsies and travellers community. You know, we can't go anywhere. You know, our kids is getting bullied. You know, it's been happening for hundreds of years in Hitler's time. You know, what more can I say to you? You know what I'm trying to say? I'll leave it up to yourselves. Thank you very much.
Sure. Any questions, please, Mr. Quinn? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Lovely speaking to you.
Right, now, the committee for debate, please. Who would like you? Councillor Longby, please.
I did the site visit last time. You probably remember I voted against giving permission for this. I was interested to see in 6.125 regarding an appeal and time limited planning permission that the burden would be set at a lesser level than if it was for permanent. So I want councillors to remember that whatever they voted last time, it has changed now because this is for permanent rather than temporary. I just heard what Mr. Quinn said, and I have some sympathy. I think last time, I think his wife was heavily pregnant. The reality of it is this is in Greenbelt, and it was really interesting and heartwarming to hear the officer say that reality is that Greenbelt is virtually sacrosanct against planning permission for travellers. So I'm really happy to hear that he thinks an alternative site's been found, and as such, I won't be. In fact, I'll be going with the officers for a refusal.
Thank you. Councillor Boddington, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, I do have a lot of sympathy with this, and indeed I voted for the temporary planning permission last time. However, as Councillor Longby has just said, it is now permanent permission, and as Mike said, that sites have been identified outside the green belt, which is suitable, and just a question of negotiating those, I believe. So I don't think we can actually give permission and be within the planning rules. We can make exceptions when there are exceptional circumstances, but the sense there's been another route found and another option, and if that option's there, then I believe we should refuse planning permission and go with the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Boddington.
Thank you, Chair. Well, same point really. It's just that from what I understand, the alternative site is not a great distance away. Perhaps Mike Davis could confirm that.
It's approximately 3 miles north.
Thank you. So in that case, I don't see why a move to there could be too disruptive for the family, because they would still be able to attend local schools, from what I understand. And because an alternative site has been found, which is outside the Greenbelt, I too will not be able to support this.
Thank you. Any other speakers, please? Okay, should somebody willing to make a recommendation, please? Councillor Boddington?
I recommend that we go with the officer's recommendation and refuse the application.
Thanks. We have a second of that. Councillor Longby, thank you. Just proposed and seconded that we have a refusal for this application on behalf of the officer's recommendation. I will now ask him to take the vote, please.
Okay, so if you can indicate whether you're voting for or against a motion to refuse the application in accordance with the officer's recommendation, the reasons set out in the report. Caroline Bagnall?
For.
Andy Boddington?
For.
Nick Hignett?
For.
Richard Huffer?
For.
Christian Lee?
For.
Hilary Luff? For. Nigel Longby?
For.
Conley?
For.
Edward Towers?
For.
And David Evans?
For.
Okay, so that's unanimous.
That's unanimous. We go along with the officer's recommendation. Thank you. We now move on to item 6, which is quarry to the east of Mushmenduk Road. Bill was Mike Wrigley present the case, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Wrigley. I'm a qualified infrastructure planner retained by the council to help manage the minerals and waste workload This is my first application on the committee, so I hope I pitched it correctly, but I'm sure you'll let me know if I haven't. This is a Section 73 application to amend a condition on an existing mineral consent. That permission required that the majority of the extracted minerals be transported by rail. The Albert Edward Bridge that carries the railway line over the Severn requires significant improvement before it can once again carry heavy goods trains. It has, though, become apparent that there is little to no prospect of that ambition being realised on a reasonable time frame. In addition to yielding a valuable mineral, the existing planning permission reduces the land to a level suitable in landscape terms for the residential development that will follow. In order to achieve both of those goals, the applicant has therefore requested via this application that the surplus mineral be exported by rail. I suspect that none of us present here today are particularly happy with this turn of events, but we must deal with the situation and the application as it lies before us. The existing permission allows for the extraction of 1.9 million tonnes over a period of up to 6 years, but probably over 5 years, at up to 400,000 tonnes per annum. The existing permission allows for the export of 100,000 tonnes of mineral per year by road, with the balance by rail. The current proposal, as amended in accordance with the developer's wishes, would use 600,000 tonnes of that 1.9 million on site, leaving a balance of 1.3 million tonnes at 300,000 tonnes per annum maximum export. The routing agreement in the original section 186 would remain in force. It directs all quarry traffic up the Build West Bank Iron Bridge bypass and away from the Build West, Much Wenlock and Iron Bridge roads. The existing permission allowed for up to 500,000 tonnes of mineral to be exported by road. This application therefore seeks consent to remove an additional 800,000 tonnes of mineral by road across 4 years, over and above that originally envisaged. To recap on the issues, there are no technical objections from consultees and crucially no objection from highways. I had initially intended to include a condition covering a second road improvement other than the Much Wenlock road signalisation, but following further discussion with highways and the applicant, I'm proposing that we remove my originally suggested condition 3 as per the late reps form that was circulated yesterday. I've also made an amendment to condition 2 to allow for the fact that the existing permission already enables up to 100,000 tonnes of mineral export. There are a couple of ancillary benefits of this particular proposal, in as much as there's now no need for the interim improvement at the Much Wenlock Road junction due to the early delivery of the signal controls at that location. And also the JPE quarry currently has no routing agreement, and the new traffic movements generated by this proposal would be offset to some extent by the end of recycling operations at the JPE quarry. So for the reasons set out in the report, I'm recommending that committee approves this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. But now we have some speakers on this one. We've got Lynn Goff, please, and your local residents, and you're speaking against the application. The right hand button on the microphone, and you have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the committee for letting me speak. My husband and I live at Crossing Cottage for over 40 years, and we've seen a lot of changes to that area over the time. The redevelopment of the power station has brought the largest changes. We look directly onto the new junction being constructed for access to the new development site. There has been a big increase in the noise levels and dust. We have constant noise of machinery working. There have been lorries operating at the JPE sand quarry for years. We have complained occasionally about the dust and dirt left on the road. However, this has got worse with the construction traffic, delivery traffic, and the HGVs carrying the fly ash. There are limited numbers of HGVs that the quarry operates, nowhere near the allowance they have. And we ask that the actual number of movements in this use is any decision making and not the number they are allowed to make under the existing quota. The council passed the original permission with consideration to the surrounding road network, with 100,000 tonnes of sand and gravel being moved by road. This increased to 300,000 tonnes would triple the traffic as the building of phase 1 starts. The existing lorry movements start at 6:30ish a.m. with HGVs coming in to take away the fly ash. There's low loaders with machinery on, concrete lorries, fuel lorries, building material deliveries, the workforce, and this continues until 5 p.m. It is chaos now with the new traffic lights in place, and we wonder sometimes how the emergency vehicles can get through. My husband's health is getting worse. He has COPD, and I worry the extra dust and pollution from the HGVs is going to make him more ill. We love our garden and we enjoy spending time in it, and we now found we only enjoy it at weekends when the construction work and traffic is not happening. The thought of even more traffic for 6 days a week for the next 4 years or more is very worrying. My ask is simple. One, that the council honours its original promise given to us, the public and Builders Parish Council, that no increase in road extraction would be granted. Any review of that decision should include remodelling the impact from the roadworks and the junction alterations and the increase in deliveries and workforce. The existing permission of 100,000 tonnes extraction will still bring noise, dust and disruption. The thought of this increasing is a very big worry and concern. We want to enjoy our retirement, and this is affecting both our physical and mental health. Please remember and honour your original decision and refuse this application. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Scott, please?
That's my house there. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Scott. Thank you.
Thank you.
I now call on Rachel Jones on behalf of Builders Parish Council. Here you have 3 minutes, please, to address the committee. Thank you.
Committee members, thank you for allowing me to speak today on behalf of Builders Parish Council. We would like to object to this application. As a parish, we have already been feeling disruption and impact caused by the Harworth operation at the former power station site. The application requests to increase vehicle movements from one junction along the A4169 to 164 two-way vehicle movements per day. 142 of these are HGV movements. Harworth are claiming that they can use the extra lorry movements acquired from the acquisition of JPE Quarry to counteract the increase they are requesting, so that the increase in traffic would not cause severe impact on the highway network. This, however, is not a true representation of what villagers can expect. JPE run a small fleet of Ridge 20-tonne lorries from Buildwas in and out a couple of times per day, and 1 or 2 movements per week of their 50-tonne articulated lorry from a different site which brings in stock. JP's permitted rate of 120 two-way trips per day is nowhere near what JP are actually doing, so the impact is going to be greater to the road than what is being reported by Harworth. The figures in the transport statement regarding JP's current movements is assumptions which are not accurate and should not be used to justify the extra movements they are requesting. There is a big difference between 20-tonne ridged and larger articulated lorries, which the sand and gravel operation would use when travelling on the roads. They have an extra number of axles, generating brake dust and pollution to the properties and pedestrians in the area. Noise from unladen trailers will also impact local residents, particularly the early morning movements. Claims of certain number of movements per hour are also implausible, as there would be nothing to restrict any more arriving at one particular time, for example, when the site opens at 7 a.m. The actual realistic impact will be far greater than what is being claimed. The transport statement also does not take into account the lorries which are already delivering building materials, machines and fuel to the site of phase 1 of the development. With further phases moving through the planning process, the numbers generated from that operation should surely need to be a consideration. The A4169 is also the only route across the river in the area when we experience flooding. The road already struggles to cope when the demand to cross the bridge increases, with queues stretching back and both ends nearly meeting in Much Wenlock. Finally, Shropshire Council made assurances to us as a parish that should the rail link not be viable, that the extraction of sand and gravel to that part of the development would not go ahead. Harworth took the gamble on getting a rail link working. They knew it wasn't a guarantee from any planning and costing exercise. This will have been factored in and accounted for in their viability stages and Plan B strategies. Nothing has changed, and I urge Shropshire Council to keep to the promises that they made. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, please? Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. I now call on the local ward member, Claire Wild, please. Thank you, Claire. You have 5 minutes to address the committee.
I'll just hold on and just sit down.
Sit yourself down, get comfortable.
Okay. Thank you, members. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. If you look at that picture, that is Mrs. Goff's house. She really has got an incredible view of the access road. I fully support what the two speakers have said earlier, but what I'd like to ask you for is for some additional conditions in case you're minded to approve the application. So the first one is, I think it's in the report 6.2.12, daily sweeping of the road. And I asked Mrs. Goff about this, and it's not been possible, I don't think, to do it properly at the moment because they've got lights up and, it's really difficult to sweep the road, but they need to find a way to sweep the road daily. Also, this really affects people from Mill Farm. So Mill Farm is slightly further up towards Much Wenlock, where they're going to have the access from the main Much Wenlock site onto the road. So the traffic builds up from there all the way to the junction. And what I'd like to see is, and possibly part of the 278, or a condition, I'll take your advice on that, is to actually keep clear lines on the road. Because it has been an issue, people haven't been able to get in and out of their houses. People get quite animated, and there've been a few unpleasant incidents. And so I'd like to see that, and I'd like to see that done fairly quickly. So if it was done as part of the 278 work by Harworth, it could be done fairly quickly. So that would really benefit, the local residents. The other thing is as well, you've seen exactly the site there, and I think there should be a way to have a wheel wash. It's only you can get temporary wheel washes, which are like flatbed skips, if you like, but there should be a way where all the wheels are washed, because clearly the dust and the dirt is quite an issue. I don't think there'll be quite as much dirt when there's a tarmac road put in, but just at the moment it's been so incredibly wet and so incredibly muddy. I know everyone tries their best, but I just think that there ought to be a wheel wash. And the other thing I'd like to see is, and again, I think it would be fairly simple, would be to have some sort of dust spray as the vehicles exit the site. I don't know how dusty it is on a day like today or when it's raining, but obviously in the summer when it's dry and it's dusty, it does create a lot of dust. And you've seen how close the Goff's house is to the main entrance, and it will be a very busy junction. So I'd like to see some sort of spray. And again, you see that quite a lot on sites. In fact, I think during last summer, they did actually spray the road to keep the dust down. So something where they could actually spray the tops of the lorries as well as the road, just to keep the dust down. And another thing that was mentioned when the objectors was speaking, and it is a really difficult one. It's about how you disperse the lorries during the day. So what happens sometimes is, although that has been rectified, you find the lorries stacking on Builders Bank. So what you tend to find is everyone wants to get to work first. So you tend to find that there's a lot of lorries about. They're all waiting to get into the quarry the first minute it opens. So you do get a lot of stacking of lorries. And if there was some way that that you could work with Harworth on that to try and equalise the movements a little bit, so that you didn't get these peaks and troughs, and certainly not the stackings in the morning or last thing. I think that would be really, really helpful. The only other thing I'd say is that the 100,000 tonnes previously could have gone through Much Wenlock or through Leighton. I understand there is an agreement, or you've altered the recommendation, so they've already got permission for 100,000 tonnes. I understand that there is an agreement that they will stick to taking those 100,000 tonnes up Builders Bank, which would be appreciated certainly by the people of the other surrounding villages. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions, please, return. Councillor Harper, please.
Thank you, Chair. Both Parish Council and residents draw concerns in relation to noise. Not sure what impact assessments may have been done previously. You have not touched on that as a particular issue. Is that something else that you think should be you've considered? It's less easy probably to do, but
I think that there have been complaints recently about piling, but that's not to do with this particular application.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that's a slightly separate issue.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Claire, very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I now call on Nigel Gould, he's a planner on behalf of the applicant. Nigel Gould, please. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee, so it's the right hand button on the microphone. Thank you.
Chair, members of the planning committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak and your time in considering this application. As you say, my name is Nigel Gould and I speak on behalf of the applicant. In line with the updates provided by officers, we fully support the recommendation and urge members to follow it. And this is a key part of the regeneration of this overall site. I would like to highlight a few key points for your consideration. Firstly, the existing minerals permission allows for the export of 100,000 tonnes per annum of material by road. Work has already started on this permission to facilitate the wider residential development. Secondly, the original minerals permission included the possibility of rail transport for a portion of the mineral. However, this option is no longer viable. Network Rail has confirmed that they do not have the necessary funds to improve the rail line for heavy freight. This was communicated in a meeting between the applicant and council officers in April of this year. Due to these circumstances, which are beyond the applicant's control, current application seeks to vary condition 12 of the original mineral permission. This would allow for the export of 300,000 tonnes per year by road, ensuring the continued delivery of the wider development, a key site in the emerging housing strategy. The applicant has presented a robust technical case to support the proposed changes. A key element of this is the JPE quarry, which the applicant purchased in 2022. The quarry has planning permission for a specific number of HGV movements, and the applicant is committed to closing JPE quarry by December 24th of this year, thereby eliminating those vehicle movements. A unilateral undertaking has been agreed with Shropshire Council, ensuring that both sites will not operate simultaneously, therefore minimising the overall net increase in vehicle movements. Importantly, the JPE quarry does not currently have a routing agreement, which has caused HGVs to travel through some of the smaller villages. The new mineral extraction will be subject to an existing routing agreement, which is secured via Section 106, which will direct vehicles to exit the site via Buildwas Bank, the A4169. This will be an improvement over the current situation and will be adhered to at all times, including when the wider developments, junction and roundabout improvements are being delivered. Critically, highways officers from both Shropshire and Telford and Wrekin councils have reviewed the proposals and raised no objections. They agree that the current junctions at Much Glenlock Road and Buildwas Bank can accommodate the increase in traffic without requiring immediate upgrades. Nevertheless, the applicant has agreed to deliver the Much Glenlock Road signalised junction ahead of the previously agreed schedule, with construction already underway. In conclusion, with no technical objections, this proposal ensures the continued regeneration of a key site. The increase in road exports due to circumstances outside the applicant's control is offset by the closure of the JPE quarry, and the routing agreement will prevent disruption to villages. Approving this application will support essential infrastructure and delivery of the wider development. We urge you to follow the recommendation of your officer in the previous application. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, please? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Gentlemen, do you want to come in about any highways issues or?
I'm happy to take questions as they occur. I think there's just a couple of matters that were raised by the objectors and the, with regard to the assumptions within the transport assessment. So the transport assessment has reviewed the number of vehicle movements from the JPE quarry and then reduced it. So the assumption is based on 2/3 rather than the 100% that they're permitted for With regard to some of the issues that Councillor Wilde raised, we consider that the majority of these will be addressed through the construction management plan. So as part of the wider outline site, obviously got a number of phases, and each one of those is subject to a construction management plan. So like the cumulative kind of impact of the whole of the construction site is sort of taken into account in these terms. So things like the road sweeping, the wheel washing and the dust emissions, that will be covered as part of every construction management plan, and the expectation would be that it would be included as part of this as well. I think that was probably about it for now, but if anyone else has got any questions.
Okay, thank you, Gemma. Thank you. Right, hope this is committee, please. Councillor Hignett, please.
Yeah, can I just start with a question for the officers? It was stated Shropshire Council made an undertaking not to go ahead with the mineral extraction if the rail option did not proceed. Can I just have clarification on whether Shropshire Council did actually promise that the mineral extraction would not go ahead if the rail option wasn't viable, please?
Yeah. Do you want me to?
Yeah.
So I'm probably answering this question on behalf of probably one of the Shropshire Council officers that was part of the outline application. So the discussions at the time were that the viability of the removal of the minerals wasn't, basically it couldn't happen. And so that was the undertaking at the time, really, that the delivery time for the mineral extraction could only happen by rail. And that was a discussion at outline stage. I think now it's been demonstrated that the mineral extraction sort of timing can work with the vehicle movement. So the kind of the position has changed on reassessment. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
The other comment, Nick?
Yes, I'll make my other couple of comments now, really. The quarry's got planning permission and the minerals have got to be removed if this site development is going to proceed. So, I mean, that's a fair point. It is very disappointing that the rail option couldn't go ahead because it does put a lot more pressure on the road movements. And I really feel for Mrs. Goff. I mean, if her house is literally on top of the site like that, I'm so pleased that there isn't a whole row of houses all the way down alongside Mrs. Goff, so I can't see from that photograph, but I presume not. But it is very difficult. And normally in this circumstance, we would make some sort of comment like, well, you have to put up with some short-term disruption to see the finished product, and then it will be quieter traffic-wise, although there will be a lot of houses built on the site. Having said that, 6 years or more, as mentioned, is not really short-term disruption. So again, I do sympathise with Mrs. Goff. I'm just not sure what we can do about it to mitigate that, apart from all the suggestions that Councillor Wilde has made as regards making sure that because it is such a large site, because there are going to be so many lorry movements, if we do approve this, then we do need to make sure that there are all the conditions necessary to try and make disruption to a minimum. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you a lot, please.
Thank you. I echo a lot of what Councillor Hignett said. I just wanting to get some clarification about the stacking of vehicles, because clearly that's quite disruptive and you didn't mention that just now. Can that be something that you can get?
Definitely, yes. I think that's one of the things that we can certainly address through the construction management plan. It's really an operational plan as to how exactly the operations will work. So we can deal with things like wheel washing, road sweeping, dust suppression, vehicle stacking, all of those things through the construction management plan. It'll clearly be for the applicant to produce that in the first instance. But once they've done that and it's submitted to us for our consideration and approval, then I'm more than happy to liaise with Councillor Wilde and Mrs. Goff about the details of that plan to try and make sure that we, clearly Mrs. Goff would rather it wasn't happening, but on the basis that it were to be approved, I'm happy to have a conversation to try and get through as many of the issues and concerns as possible. Just one other thing, Chair, if I may. The 6 years that was mentioned by Councillor Hignett, that was on the original consent. So given that 600,000 tonnes of the material is to be used on site, that's now reduced to 4 years in total under this, if this were permitted.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Councillor Baker, please.
Thank you, Chair. There are several things that concern me about this application. One of the things is the amount of disruption and noise and extra pollution that that's going to be caused by this extra road traffic. But the other thing is that these are going to be large lorries carrying huge loads. And although I accept that the applicants are going to make some road improvements with regard to the junctions and so on, the hammering of the road surfaces in the area, which are already in a bad condition, by all this extra traffic is of concern. You know, just with ordinary commuter traffic and so on going along those roads at the moment, they're not in a great condition. And so the thought of all of these extra lorries travelling day after day is of concern.
Thank you. Councillor Longby, please.
We all, as councillors, I presume we all did, had an email from another quarry site, which was regarding the additional stuff that was going to hit the Shropshire sort of market. Now, when the 200,000 tonnes were going by rail, I think there may have been a presumption that that was going further out into the country. What his concern is, this will be an additional amount that's now got to go into Shropshire. So it's a question for Mr. Rigby really, is can Shropshire sustain that extra amount, or will it crash the price, which was the emailer's concern?
You answer that, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's a good question and something that's only become apparent in the last 24 hours from this particular operator. My view of this is that the amount of material that we're talking about in the context of the Shropshire market is not hugely significant. I don't think that we can make a case to say that it would damage the market. The material was to have been extracted in any case, 100,000 tonnes over, I think originally 4 to 6 years, depending on which way the operator went, would have meant that a significant proportion of the material would have ended up in the local market by road transport anyway. And I'm aware of the fact that there are potential extensions on other sand and gravel sites in the county because some of the existing operations are running down in terms of the amount of reserve that they have. So I can't support the idea that this would have a significant impact on the local market.
Councillor Bollington, please.
Thank you. I don't like it, but I think we probably need to approve it. So it made sense when it was going out by rail. And whether that perhaps always seemed a bit ambitious because it was actually the right way to do something for once, rather than a wrong way to do something. And I feel instinctively this is the wrong way to do things, but I also feel that we don't have a great deal of choice about it. So I'm less worried about the market price crashing because that's not really our job. You know, if we have another supermarket and you don't develop some market, that's just life. They have to test it well. But we do need enough sand and gravel, and the government has a very strong and structured agenda. And I feel that, I mean, I'll certainly be going with this. A lot does depend on the construction management plans.
Yes.
You know, and those details are absolutely critical to minimise the damage to the environment, local environment, disruption of the roads, and disruption for residents.
Councillor Howard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments really. Regarding this late notification the committee's received, he makes comment that to his knowledge, no local quarry companies were consulted on the application. And I think this is a crucial element in considering the impacts of the proposal on the allocated and permitted quarries in the county. I'm disappointed to hear that's the case, and I would want you to say that that wasn't true. I think in any planning application, proper consultation should be followed, and due consideration given to the various residents and parties involved. So I'd like some reassurance that something has happened in consultation. However, he goes on to say he believes the application should be deferred until the key consideration of the impacts is properly considered. So I'd like to know, and it goes on way by the council. So for Mr. Rigby, do you think this application should be deferred in order for that consultation to take place? And the other aspect is this management plan. I'm surprised, Councillor Wilde has raised various things here, and you say, well, they'll be dealt with as construction management plan that Councillor Bollington referred to. Is it not the right thing to put that in an appendix to this application going forward, this proposal, or are we just to be told about it today that that's going to happen? Because basically approving this, we're almost taking that on trust, and I would like to see it in black and white and written down for the committee to say yes or no to.
Thank you, Chair. I'll deal with the second question first. So on the construction management plan, it is normal practice for applications of this sort to be subject to a construction management plan rather than that being part of the application as it's first submitted. So that is what we would normally take forward. As for the consultation, it's not, again, usual practice for the council to consult other core operators on another operator's applications. I mean, to extend Councillor Bollington's analogy, you know, if Tesco put in an application, we wouldn't consult Sainsbury's because we know what they'd say. So I don't think there's really a case to consult other operators. It's not something that I've seen done anywhere in the past. So I don't think there's any case for deferring the application on the basis of missing consultation. We've done all of the statutory consultations and the non-statutory ones, consulted widely, and as I say, there were no technical objections from any of the technical consultees. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So, okay, I accept quite a lot what you say there, but knowing that there are these concerns and he's now raised them, even if you haven't consulted with him, do you think that he's given sufficient grounds for a deferral in order for those things now to be considered by yourself? And there was one other aspect on. Yes, I think this construction management plan, I do think it should be brought forward and put into a planning application. The fact that Councillor Wells mentioned all these various things it reminded to accept, I think she shouldn't have had to do that because that should have been part of the plan that we could have seen this reassurance given to the community before the application is considered. That's all.
Can I come back there, Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I fully accept that some of the issues that are raised are important. They're going to be really important for residents like Mrs. Goff, hence my undertaking to make sure that there's full consultation on that before we do approve it. But it is the same procedure that these sorts of details, and they are quite, granular, are dealt with as part of conditions and plans that come forward as part of conditions. It wouldn't be normal for that to be brought forward at this stage. And as I say, with regard to the email that we received yesterday, in the context of the totality of material of sand and gravel that's extracted in Shropshire, Shropshire is a very significant county in terms of sand and gravel production. The additional amount that's coming forward through this application, and let's not forget that it's already got permission, it's the means by which we're trying to, the means by which the applicant is trying to remove the material from the site. It's not significant in the context of what Shropshire is already producing. So again, I don't think there's anything in that email that causes me, gives me pause for thought to think we ought to be considering something fresh and to defer the application. So yeah, I don't think there's anything that would require a deferment in there.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Mr. Colley, you want to add anything? Jeremy, you want to come back?
Is that okay? Yes, so just with regard to the wording of the condition for the construction management plan, we have a standard condition that's probably got about 20 bullet points within it, which effectively says, wheel washing, stakeholder, a travel plan for working. So I think with the committee's kind of approval, if we substitute the wording of the condition for that, which will cover all aspects, and I think add an additional point in about the kind of the commute player and traffic management surrounding the site or some appropriate wording like that, then I think that that will cover the majority of the issues that have been raised today, alongside with the written agreement that's currently within the 106 about the vehicle movements as well.
Thank you, Jem. Maybe Colin, you got anything or? You got anything? John?
I think most things have been commented on. It is very difficult, as other councillors have said. You know, I do understand the residents' issues with this. The development is, you know, it's going to happen, and we need to move the materials. So I am reading the conditions now, and it says no mineral to be exported until construction management plan submitted, and various other conditions. So I wouldn't say regrettably, but I am minded to support this. Thanks.
Thank you. Just wrap it.
Thank you, Chair. Pretty much it's all been said. I don't like it. I don't like going back on previous commitments. And on that understanding, I appreciate circumstances of of change in relation to Network Rail. But I think we've got one arm behind our back. We've got little choice other than to approve this, although clearly don't like it. I haven't got a lot of appetite for doing business this way.
As a lead, you wish anything?
No, I understand.
Okay.
You know what's been said already. It's a very difficult application.
Okay, thank you. Right, do we have a proposal for the application, please? Councillor Ignat, seconded by Councillor Boddington. And subject to this transport plan and everything being included in the application.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Chair. We'll move this forward. It's got planning permission. The minerals have got to be removed for the site development to proceed. So I propose that we go with the officer's recommendation. And I do ask that the construction management plan is fully agreed and sorted out. And I hope there's plenty of communication with local residents and the parish council and the local member to make sure the construction plan is acceptable before this goes ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. You said anything as well?
No, I think that's something.
Okay, you're right. Right, we're open to the vote. Kim, if you take the vote, please. Thank you.
Okay, so we can, we've got an offer, a member recommendation and seconded to approve the officer recommendation with an amendment to the condition for the CMP and also the conditions which Mike referred to in his introduction. Subject to the conditions in the report and the signing of a unilateral undertaking as set out in the report. If you can indicate whether you're voting for or against, please. Caroline Bagnall?
Against.
Andy Boddington?
For.
Nick Hignett?
For.
Richard Huffer?
For.
Christian Lee?
For.
Hilary Luff?
For.
Nigel Lumby?
For.
Rachel Connolly?
For.
Edward Towers?
Reluctantly for.
And David Evans?
For. 9 for, 1 against. We'll now take a comfort break for those who need it. Okay? Thank you.
Hello. You know where she lives now. And this is where you live.
Yeah.
That's really annoying.
Yeah.
I just feel.
Yeah.
All right, then. Okay.
It's not
I'm going to do this and then just go ahead and do it. Yeah. Yes, it's.
Yeah, this, they decided something with it. It's all, which is all this is.
I'll just get the new officers to introduce yourselves because that's, you know, everybody who we are, so.
Yeah, good afternoon, Junior Curry, and I'm a planning officer.
Good afternoon, I'm Andy Wigley, I'm the Policy and Violence Service Manager.
Good afternoon, I'm Becky Jones, I'm the Senior Conservation Officer for the south of the county.
I'm Sarah Jones, I'm a Senior Planning Officer.
Thank you for that. Right, we go on to item number 7, which is Neat Shell, Neat Lane, Shirehall, and that's produced by Sarah, please.
Thank you. This application, the site's located north, as you can see, of RAF Osford in the Greenbelt countryside. Next slide, please. So the application is for a mixed development, including the renovation and conversion of Neat Hill House into a hotel to include 12 bedroom suites on the first floor and second floors, a bar, a restaurant and a bistro. And it also includes the construction of a new 46 bed accommodation building designed around a courtyard. And as part of the spa hotel development, what's known as house farm or bottom yard, which I'll show you in a moment, agricultural buildings would have one of those buildings, one of the intact barns retained, with the other previously converted barn replaced with a new building to house a reception, cafe and spa. The development also includes the reinstatement of the walled garden to its full height to provide accommodation to service events such as corporate days and weddings. The scheme also includes the construction of 58 residential units of 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 bedroomed houses for both open market and market rental occupancy, with access from Long Lane, which would be repositioned. It also includes the creation of a glamping area within the woodland, including 17 pods at the north edge of the site and a new access to the west onto Neatchley Lane. Next slide, please. This slide shows the main house, which is towards the south east. If you see that square block there, beyond that, just there's what's called the stable yard, and then the building which would be retained, the barn that would be retained, and beyond that, to the north west of the site is the walled, what's existing of the walled garden. So as part of the proposals, the Long Lane entrance would form the formal access to the hotel complex, and there would be a one-way system proposed within the grounds for hotel guests and service vehicles, with hotel guests and service vehicles entering via the existing Long Lane entrance and departing from the newly formed access onto Neatchley Lane. The new western access would also cater for the entrance to the day spa as well as the events parking area. The proposed residential development there is an existing access off Long Lane, that's a field access at the southwestern extremity of the site, and it's proposed that this will be closed off and the residential development access more centrally located on Long Lane. As part of the proposal, the applicant has agreed to fund the implementation of a passing bay along Long Lane, which would be in addition to the existing accesses to increase the free movement of vehicles along the carriageway. Next slide, please. So that shows the residential development. Long Lane runs along the bottom of the south of that slide. The residential development you can see there with the main entrance to the east of that running up towards the niche house, and then the what's known as bottom barn, and then beyond that you can see the walled garden proposal. The Neachley Lane runs sort of north to south on the western side of that slide, and the first access along there is the existing access. The second access is the new access, which I've mentioned. Next slide, please. So this shows the proposed residential development with the repositioned access of Long Lane. Next slide, please. And this shows that it's been designed with a number of character areas as described in the officer report. Next slide, please. This shows, gives you a flavour of the scale and design of the Spa Hotel. It's a 3-storey development. Next slide, please. And this shows you an extract of the element of existing barn that would be retained. If you look, if you can see that detail, the darker floor plan, the red line on that shows you where the retained barn element would sit within the hotel. Next slide, please. So this is a bigger extract of the proposed hotel. It's the ground floor plan, and there'd be 46 bedrooms in total. The footprint of the hotel and spa block is approximately 3 times that of the existing listed buildings. Next slide, please. This shows the proposed ground floor of the walled garden. The scheme proposes the walls of the garden to be reinstated and repaired to line through with the highest part of the existing wall, which is along its northern boundary, and that's approximately 5 metres high. The development within the walled garden includes the erection of single-storey structures following the removal of the existing lean-to structure and sheds. So if you look at that drawing, there is a dwelling within, an existing dwelling within the walled garden, which is the rectangle in the north east of that floor plan that you can see. So that's that building there. That's existing. At the moment, I understand that there's a dog breeding business, but that's moving out from the walled garden. There is the lean-to element runs along that same elevation. That's it, to the western side, and that's to be demolished and to be replaced by those buildings there. So the development in the wall garden includes the erection of single-storey structures following the removal of the existing lean-to structure and sheds to provide accommodation to service and event space, including office, kitchen and associated storage, guest facilities, indoor event space and staff accommodation. Next slide, please. So there's a series of slides now which give you some views in and around the site. So this is the main entrance from Long Lane. You can see that on the western side of the entrance is a small existing commercial development, and on the east side is the lodge, which is in separate occupancy and ownership. Next slide, please. So these slides show the junction of Long Lane and Neachley Lane. Long Lane and Neachley Lane are single track lanes with informal passing places. These lanes are shared by both motor vehicles and by pedestrians, cyclists and equestrians. They're unlit with no footway provision due to the lack of usable passing spaces and driver impatience. The verges are significantly damaged in numerous places along its length under the existing traffic flows. There is also evidence that the Long Lane and Neachley Lane suffers from flooding, including approximately 220 metres east of the existing site entrance from Long Lane. That's the main entrance, and at the junction of Neachley Lane and Long Lane, and the north section of Neachley Lane. Next slide, please. This is some photos of the main house. This is the Grade 2 listed building. The other buildings are Kirkledge listed. So the next slide, please. So this shows you information that's been submitted as part of the application is drone footage of the roof. If you look at that, so that at the forefront of the photograph is the main house. Then beyond that, in the far distance, you can see what's remaining of the walled garden. And in between, you can see glimpses of the other existing buildings. Next slide, please. This is where I've spoken about bottom yard and the barn that's going to be retained, where the main hotel building would be located. There's been significant intervention of the original barns there, so this would be demolished. There's a dwelling there. Next slide, please. And then you can see the barn that would be retained within the hotel complex there. So you've got the gable end of the house and then the barn there. Next slide, please. So again, that's where the hotel development would be positioned. Next slide, please. And that's more of the location. You can see that generally the site is heavily treed and yeah. Next slide, please. So, can we go back to slide 26? Where's that? Sorry, I was being clever. It is the one that has the. Oh, no, that's all. Yes. Oh no. Wrong that slide number. Bear with me. It's 21. So it's the coloured plan showing the whole. Right. Okay. Thank you. The scheme's been put forward as enabling development because of a conservation deficit, which is an exception to policy. So the application's been submitted on the grounds that unless it is cross-subsidised, unless it's cross-subsidised, the conservation and repair or refurbishment of assets with conservation or community value would not otherwise occur. So it's a very specific form of application. The enabling development is expected to be the minimum necessary to bridge the conservation deficit. So in this case, the site's in policy terms, it's greenbelt. So overall, the proposed development, when taken as a whole, constitutes inappropriate development in the greenbelt. It's also contrary to our housing strategy because Neachley is outside any settlement which is appropriate for housing. It's not community club or part of a community cluster settlement. The proposed 58 residential units are both open market and market rental occupancy. And clearly that doesn't form part of our the council's housing strategy and conflicts with the policies associated with its greenbelt designation. So it would represent inappropriate development by definition. It also harm the openness of the greenbelt in this location. The applicants put forward as part of the package of benefits, in addition to the heritage benefit, has put forward activities such as sort of community benefits, such as World War II sort of shelter experience, interpretive displays and panels, parkland waymarking, open days, hard hat tours, woodland management volunteering, construction apprenticeships, work experience, taster placements and heritage construction skills masterclasses. They've also put forward opportunities for communities to have space in a Nissen hut. The proposed community, amongst other things, which is all in the report, the proposed community and educational benefits put forward, whilst commendable, are not directly related to planning and can only be given minimal weight in the determination of the application. So we can go back to where we were, which was the slides of the house. That's it. Thank you. As you'll see in the report, we've been looking at evidence from urban explorers, which is something I haven't looked at before, but it's quite interesting, which shows the condition of the building to be noticeably worse than that shown in the application documents and photos. We've got a series of slides here which show the deterioration of the main house over the years. So the first one you can see there, 2016, the damage to the staircase and it's in partial collapse. And then 2023, total collapse of the staircase and upper floors and roof. Next slide, please. 2017, loss of features and partial collapse of the ceiling. 2019, total collapse, the upper floors. 2023, over 4 years open to the elements. And officers are concerned about potential structural issues that haven't been identified. Next slide, please. You can see in 2017, loss of features, partial collapse of the ceiling. 2023, total collapse of the upper floors. Next slide, please. 2016, partial collapse of the secondary staircase, and 2023, collapse of the secondary staircase and upper roof. The evidence leads officers to the opinion that the application is based on photos and drone footage that are out of date to varying degrees, and significant further deterioration has occurred with further collapse of internal structures to the extent that the building is now in an extremely precarious state. With the loss of the roof structure, internal floors, walls and staircases, the building appears to be predominantly a facade. You can't get inside at the moment because of health and safety reasons. So this is hence we've been doing a trawl of the evidence that we can find to see what the condition of the building is. Enabling development can only be considered if it provides benefits that outweigh the disbenefits and where the decision maker is confident that the scheme would secure the conservation and heritage assets, which includes the asset's future. The site's greenbelt designation also adds a further level of complexity for the decision maker in this case, the NPPF placing substantial weight on any harm caused by inappropriate development to its openness. So the officer recommendation is for refusal for the reasons stated in the report, which you'll be thankful I'm not going to read. And officers have concluded that the information submitted to support this application is insufficient to demonstrate the benefits of the development will be sufficient to outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt and the harm to the significance of the heritage assets which has been identified. The assessment of the weight given to the material considerations in the determination of this application, however, is a matter for the committee to decide.
So, we have a speaker on this, which is Tony McAtee. We have a planning consultant.
Chairman,
We have 3 minutes.
ladies and gentlemen.
The right hand button on the microphone.
Nick Hill House and its surrounding grounds are a heritage asset protected by law and in accordance with national and local planning policies should be conserved through a positive strategy for its conservation, including achieving a viable use. A consideration of its future requires an understanding of the condition and setting of the house and grounds. And knowing this, my clients undertook considerable formal pre-application consultation with the council, including visits to the site in 2023 by the relevant officers. It was only because the resulting advice was positive that my clients prepared and submitted the applications before this committee. For this reason, we would respectfully submit that to fully understand the proposals, it is essential for the committee to undertake a site visit before making a decision. However, in the event you wish to consider the applications today, we would ask that you consider the following matters before making your decision. The house is clearly close to a point of no return, and its repair and renovation will be costly. However, as accepted by the council's planning and conservation officers at pre-app stage, this is possible with the required amount of enabling development helping with the funding. My clients are therefore very concerned that without visiting the site, the new conservation officer is now suggesting the opposite. The work done by my client's consultants has been in line with best practice, and we cannot agree with the assertions being made by your officers. The information on the impact of the proposals and their cost provided with the applications clearly demonstrates the house can be saved with the necessary enabling development and will not, as suggested in the committee report, be a copy. The requirement to clear the site before the application could be considered is both unreasonable and contrary to the advice previously given. Part of the restoration of the grounds, especially the World War II remains, linking the site to the adjacent RAF Cosford, would have public involvement and create a significant public benefit. This link, together with the creation of 120 jobs, the market and rental housing, and recreation and wellbeing facilities, clearly represents significant public benefit and support the grant of permission. My clients are aware that the site stands in an area of Greenbelt where inappropriate development is to be resisted, unless there are very special circumstances to justify the grant of planning permission, contrary to policy. One such special circumstance accepted over many years is the concept of enabling development to protect heritage assets which might otherwise not be supported. There are many hotels based around historic houses which are in Greenbelt locations and which have been significantly extended. It is respectfully submitted this part of the proposals cannot be a reason for refusal. Whilst the location of the housing is not in a location where house might otherwise be accepted, it is respectfully submitted the need for enabling development justifies an exception to policy in this case. It is noted that a number of the statutory consultees state they require further detailed technical information, and my clients consider any concerns can be overcome. My clients are prepared to provide this detail, but before undertaking this additional work, they would ask that in these circumstances, the committee indicate their support for the applications with an indication that they would be minded to approve the proposed development subject to the technical concerns being overcome. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much, sir. Right, the committee, get along.
Thank you, Chair. This is in the next ward down to me, and Donington and Albright as parishes from May next year. We've combined. This just isn't walkable from if you lived in a house there. So the only thing you've got is a petrol station, but you've got to walk down Long Lane to get there. And as has been said, no pavements, etc. I was quite excited that I would like this house to be brought back. That's what I believe in. but I was conflicted a little bit by Greenbelt because we've got lots of issues regarding the Greenbelt at the moment around Albrighton, including the prospectus of 800 houses being built against plan. So 56 didn't seem a lot. However, the more I looked at this, I don't know about facsimile. If the inside couldn't be restored, you don't need another house. We've got Western Park down the road that you go in and say, wow, look at this, but it's not used. So I was quite up for it being a hotel. It's just 56 houses is too much. The footprint for the hotel is far too big, and it will disrupt the look of what is a graded building. It detracts from the house. So for that reason, and the fact that it's in Greenbelt, I can't support this.
Please.
Chair, as we have a conservation officer here with us, which you don't often get at planning meetings, I wondered if there's anything else that the officer wanted to say about how important Neat Hill House is. I mean, it's grade 2, it's not grade 2 star, it's not grade 1. There is concern about the structural integrity. I know it's got a Greek Doric porch and certain features inside, most of which seem to have fallen down if we're just left with the walls. It was a good example of a country gentleman's residence, according to the report, but how important would our conservation officer put on this, based on the fact that we're being asked to support a considerable number of houses and glamping pods and all sorts to try and make sure that we can justify the maintenance and keeping this grade 2 listed building? Thank you.
You're right, it's only grade 2. So it's in the majority of listed buildings. So it's not specifically significant to the extent of a grade 2 star or a grade 1. A lot of the enabling schemes that we don't see very many enabling schemes. They're very, very rare. The bar is set very, very high. And the only ones that I've been aware of are for higher graded buildings. I'm very concerned about the deterioration of the building and the fact that it hasn't been made safe. No maintenance has been undertaken on the building. We have lost, from the video evidence that we've been able to find, we've lost a significant amount of the structure. So there is a question about how much of the building significance is left, and without being able to access the building for health and safety reasons, that is, we've only got video evidence available, and I'm quite concerned that a proposal to convert this building to hotel use would require significant rebuilding, which would be predominantly new work, which you get to a point where there's a tipping point, and how much of a listed building are you saving and how much is new work. So those are my concerns, and hence why I'm not supporting the application from a conservation perspective.
Thank you. Councillor Boddington, please.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, this is a very imperfect application. There's lots of information missing. And as we heard, they want to hear whether we would give an indicative approval in order to develop the application further. Well, in that case, it should have been an outline planning permission and not a full application as such. But even then, I think most people can see the obvious problems with this. So, as officers have said, it's a major development in the Greenbelt. This is not a small development in the Greenbelt. It's absolutely vast and it's huge. I do wonder whether you need all of it as an enabling development and whether you need that much. And there is, as we've been hearing, the critical issue about whether in the end there's anything that can be saved or whether we just have pastiche and it's not actually a real historic building because there's nothing really left of the historic fabric. So I'm not in favour of this. The whole development is too much for the location, too much for the surrounding roads, and I don't think we can approve an application or approve a proposal on the basis of this application with a lot more information for a big scheme like this, and it is a big scheme. Thank you.
Councillor Bath, please.
Thank you. Just for clarification, on the map that we've got here in front, which we haven't seen on there, opposite on Long Lane, are those properties on the other side of the road?
No, that's Cosford.
This is all right. So that's all Cosford, the Air Museum, and all
Yeah,
that building.
actually, that one, that shows it.
Oh, right, that's it. So that's all part of the Cosford and the RAF.
Yes.
And it's not the Cosford homes, not any of their
No,
houses, right?
no.
Okay. So where would the Cosford, in relation to that, where are the Cosford houses?
The 060.
Is that where the 06 is?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. I wasn't too sure.
Anybody else wish to make a comment, please? Councillor Harper.
It's probably more of a question. I have to say it's really saddening to see a property of significance fall into a state of absolute ruin. Obviously, there's structures there that can be brought back into the benefit of the community, and others. Just a point of clarity, irrespective of any listing or schedules on it, at what point that a property becomes abandoned, derelict, does it not have any planning merit? A lot of old structures that are deemed abandoned, that have gone down, they no longer carry any planning merit. At what point does this?
Well, do you want?
Well, I mean, the building remains listed until such time as it. I said irrespective of any legal attached to it. Just to assist members, I think part of the issue that officers have with this application in terms of it complying with the national guidance, historic kingdoms guidance on enabling development, is a full assessment of its current condition. We have information about that in the application, in the applicant's submissions, but we don't have that full condition assessment that's the requirements of the guidelines, and that's partly because the building's unsafe, but nonetheless we need that information as part of that ability to assess the repair costs there. And until you've got that information, it's not possible to put together that full calculation of repair costs and therefore calculation of the conservation or the size of the conservation deficit. The danger of not having that information is if you've underestimated the repair costs of that, then it would inevitably increase the quantum of enabling development required to address that conservation deficit and bridge it. So that's why officers are concerned we don't have that full set of information, and members have alluded to that themselves at this point. I think there's been reference to pre-application advice. Throughout that pre-application advice, it was stressed that there is a need to comply with that national guidance. Enabling development is inevitably a complex area and specialist area of planning, and it's also one that's inevitably controversial because it involves departing from both local and national policy sense, particularly in this instance in the green belt. So I think it's difficult for officers to assess at the moment the degree to which you can retain and save that building, because we don't have that full condition assessment information at this stage. So that's one of the gaps in this case at this stage.
Anybody else wish to speak, please? Before we put it to the vote? Yeah.
Would it be possible to defer it for that assessment?
Yes,
and
that's
for them
my question.
To get that assessment for us?
I think it's a time. I mean, it would be a matter for the applicant really to address that. But I think at this stage, that's probably a lengthy process because you need to be able to stabilise that building and access it to give a full assessment of that. Now, you might argue that's an unreasonable cost at this stage, but I think we need a fuller set of information in that sense to be able to address that. So, yeah, and there are various other aspects of building a full enabling case around this. We don't, for example, have an understanding of whether all the options for this buildings to secure an optimum viable use have been fully explored. Normally, that would involve an element of marketing of the property, and that needs to be a full exercise. That can take 6 to 8 months to have as a minimum to fully explore that whether there is another option for this building. Enabling development is a last resort once all other options have been explored. So, I think the deferral will have to be a lengthy one in order to gather that information.
Okay. Towers, please.
And to follow that through, and it's the top. We've had clocks ticking and all that sort of stuff. Is the time to do that? Has the clock ticked too far for that to happen?
I think that we've had this application, there was some pre-app done. Obviously the applicant and agent have gone away and taken that pre-app and put in an application, and I think this is the application that we need to consider at this point in time. Because it would be a lot of new information, which may mean that the enabling development is a completely different scheme.
Yes, I understand the concept of the enabling development, because obviously the developer has got to find some way of funding his development for the structure. Yes, there's currently this other alternative thing in the south, or whichever direction it is, but it all comes down to time. And I think what this application is doing is asking, is there the commitment of the Shropshire Council Planning Committee here to see something happen there of the nature of a rescue with what they've been able to calculate as a possible project that's viable. So we're left with the decision, is that right or wrong? So I think that's as far as my thinking goes at the moment. Thank you.
Mr. Boddington, please.
Thank you. On the basis that we must decide the application before us and the evidence before us, I don't think we can accept this application. So I would like to propose going with the officer's recommendation and rejecting this application for the reasons stated by the officers at some length.
Thank you. Can I have a second for that, please? Councillor Bagnall. Okay. Right, we're proposing a seconder to go along with the officer's recommendation to refuse the application. Would you take the vote, please, Ken?
Okay, so if you can indicate whether you're voting for or against, please. Caroline Bagnall.
For.
Andy Boddington.
For.
Nick Hignett.
Yeah. Sorry, you might turn it off.
Sorry, it was already on. Nick Hignett.
For.
Richard Huffer.
For.
Christian Lee.
For.
Hilary Wheeler. For. Nigel Lumby.
For.
Rachel Conley.
For.
Edward Towers.
For.
And David Evans.
For. That's unanimous decision to go with the officer's recommendation. Thank you. Right, we now come on to item number 8, which is West Bungalow Shrewsbury, Montgomery. Tanya, this is your one, all right? Thank you.
Okay, so afternoon members, this application was presented to committee at outline stage, and consent was granted for 2 dwellings on the site. The reserved matters application was presented previously, and members deferred to make a decision at that time until a historic impact assessment had been received and assessed, and we consulted with the conservation team. At the time this application was originally presented, there was an outstanding objection from the conservation team requesting a full assessment was required to assess the impact on the listed church, St Michael's Church. A full A historic impact assessment has been received and it has been subjected to consultation with Shropshire's conservation team. And based on that assessment, the conservation team raised their objection to the proposal in terms of the impact on the historic environment. I'll just run through the slides that were presented to members previously at the reserved matters stage, and then I'll finish with the conclusions. So this is showing the site layout plan and the example plan. Yeah, this is the elevation plans of attached plot 1 and 2 of the detached properties as the street scene to show properties in the existing street scene. And these are a number of photos to give an idea of the surrounding area site. So that was the last slide. That was a point that was discussed at the previous previously presented. So the opposite conclusion, this is the principle of 2 dwellings on the site has already been established by the consent. Planning officers consider that the proposed layout scale and appearance of the proposed 2-storey dwellings could be accommodated without appearing out of character with the existing residential development in the surrounding area, or reducing the level of amenity currently enjoyed by occupiers of the neighbouring dwellings. The recommendation is therefore one of conditional approval. And there's a list of conditions in the officer report.
Thank you. Right, we now have some speakers on this one. Mr. Tony Shepherd is going to read a statement on behalf of Mrs. Greenley. Mr. Tony Shepherd would like to come to the desk, please. That's the right hand button on the microphone. You have 3 minutes to read the statement, sir.
Just before we start, Mr. Chairman, is Heather Kidd listening in?
Yes.
Hello,
yes, I am. I'm on screen.
Right, this is a section for 2 new builds next to Tara from Mr. and Mrs. Coney, their neighbour, which is the bed bungalow directly on the right of the little wooden bungalow on the left. We are strongly against this new build for the following reasons. This is going to take our right to natural daylight. There's a Right of Light Act 1959. There is a 20-year rule, which means right of light applies to all properties that have received natural daylight for more than 20 years, which we have, it guarantees us to receive natural daylight. This act can be found on the Government UK website. These new builds will look straight into our living room, which is going to take away our privacy. We support the build of 1 or 2 bungalows, as this would be less invasive for us. This is not about a right to a view, but a right to natural daylight. There is a need for bungalows in our area, as we all know. We are an ageing population, and bungalows would free up family homes. These 2 new builds would not be in keeping with the rest of the village. 2 houses would be an overbuild on such a small plot and look out of place with the village design. As we are in the heart of the village, with such a close proximity to the school and village hall, parking is going to be an issue. It becomes congested now. This will only intensify at drop-off and pick-up times. As we said before, we would support the build of 1 or 2 bungalows, as this would make sense to us and the community. So that is a letter from Mr. and Mrs. Cooney, and obviously I can't answer questions on that letter.
Thank you. Now I believe you're going to speak on behalf of Shrewsbury Parish Council.
That's right. So I'm here as a member of Shrewsbury Parish Council. This has been to planning, I believe, 3 times now, and 3 times the Parish Council have asked the council not to build 2, which are in effect 4-bedroom houses on this tiny plot. on the plans, it's still, it says there are 3 bedrooms, 1 bedroom study. So they are in effect 4 bedrooms. Okay, so if we go back to the slide where we just were, there's a little bungalow right by it, and then you have the red bungalow, and then you have the school. A school drop off and pick up times, the cars are nose to tail all along that street. If you build 2 4-bedroom bungalows there, you could have 6 to 7 cars coming in and out of those 2 houses morning and night. There is supposedly room for 6 cars inside that little curtilage. I can tell you now, time you get your wheelie bins in, your wheelbarrows, there will be no room for 6 cars inside that property. The one beside it has got a lot bigger apron, and they have 2 cars, and that is adequate. Now, I read the bump Sunday afternoon of why the council, partly, and all the legal stuff. I understand that if you refuse it, they may take you to litigation, and you'll be responsible, am I right, for the fees if you lose. Okay, well, what about their right to natural sunlight? Can they take you to court to want their natural sunlight? In Shrewsbury, we have a good history of supporting new builds or planning applications. This has been a disaster from the start. Nobody from Shrewsbury has ever supported this build. Nobody. We're all supported, well, we're all 100% supportive of 1 bungalow, which is what there is now and what there is beside it. I understand there's application for 2 buildings there, so we will accept 2 bungalows. We are dead against that. I've been here this afternoon listening to you, and what I can see, you've all treated every application fairly. I've been on the council for 40 years. Yes, I'm that old. I've never been to a meeting like this before. I've never felt the need to come to a meeting like this before, but I've come to talk about these 2 houses, which I think is wrong. Thank you. I'm quite willing to take questions.
Any questions, Mr. Shepherd, please? No, thank you very much. Thank you. Now calling the local member, Councillor Edward Kidd, who was speaking online. Heather, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
5 minutes to address the committee, please. Heather?
Right, I've been twice before and explained exactly why it is that both the village and the parish have been against this on this site. The principle of building on the site has never been disputed, and as Tony has just said, we have a really good reputation for supporting new builds. In fact, there are 13 being built on site as we speak, which no one objected to. So for the village and for the parish to be so vehement about these, there must be something wrong with the application. I'm really disappointed with Heritage, because actually the view across to the church is vitally important, and the picture that's involved, that's just been shown to us all, does not give the proper view that you get if you're standing in Camlad. It just shows the view between the 2 bungalows. There is a large tree there that has grown over the last 5 to 10 years since the property was rented out, and that is obscuring the view. When this site is developed, that tree will go and the church will be really visible. We are proud of that church. It is floodlit all year, so that actually we can see it from all sorts of different angles around the village. So for Heritage to take this view, I am incredibly disappointed, and so is the village. We raise the height of these buildings because it actually is overbearing, as you can see from the pictures that the planning officer has put up. And if you remember, twice I have brought with me pictures to show you exactly how low Tara is next door and how low West Bungalow is. So to actually have these houses bang next to Tara, they are overbearing, and the sun, as I explained last time and the time before, comes round that side, and these houses back against Tara there will block the sunlight. The whole reason that Tara was built as far back as it was behind West Bungalow was because the sun comes round that way, and because there is a window into their living room on that side. Planning at that point, which we can't find because actually planning has put it somewhere since we became unitary, was absolutely specific that they needed to be staggered so that the sunlight was not blocked, and that they did continue to get evening sun, even in the winter, into their living room side window, which at the last planning committee, we were told there were no windows down the side. There are. The height of those properties is just so high. We actually asked either for it to be bungalows, and the planning committee asked for that, or for the ridge to be considerably dropped. If you go ahead with these houses, I want officers delegated to make sure that ridge line comes down, because it's actually higher than the house that's across the way at Smithy Gardens. Smithy Gardens house on the main road does not block the sunlight because it's further along and it's not flat onto the road. So there are all sorts of issues about this application. I'm really concerned about the overdevelopment. Nowhere else in the village, if anybody's been to the village, have we got houses built bang up against one another as these are. Everywhere else, they're either semi-detached, as I said last time, or they are terraces. Everything that is an individual house is set in its own grounds with garden all the way around it. It is nothing like the village design statement that has actually been submitted twice. So I have real concerns about this. The entrances has actually been improved, and it was improved last time because there were going to be two entrances instead of the one that we have at the moment. Tony Shepherd is completely right. The amount of cars out there, because we have a very successful school and we have around 120 on roll with the nursery now, it's going up. The other two schools in the federation have just become outstanding, and we are hoping that Shrewsbury will be outstanding at an imminent Ofsted. This will mean that we continue to have more and more parents, and there is no parking. So twice a day, the village is flooded. What I can see is, unless with any development on this site, we have lines drawn by the development on the road to make it a no parking zone, we will continue to have problems. In fact, we've had to have that happen at Tara because of this very issue. I therefore ask for some significant changes. Lines on the road, drop roofs, or a resubmission, and it turned down. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Heather. We now have David Winch, the applicant. Would like to speak on this, please. So you have 3 minutes to address the committee, so thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee. I'm not a technical person. I'm not a planning officer. I understand that the architect that I've instructed has been dealing with the planning officers and has amended the plans over time to reach the plans that you have now. And I understand that all the highways and historic issues have been addressed. Talking about how proud Shrewsbury is of the church, I am also proud of Shrewsbury. I was, as a child in the 1950s and 1960s, came to stay with my aunt at West Bungalow, with my grandparents at East Bungalow, which is subsequently sold, knocked down, and Tara was built. My grandparents and other relatives are in the churchyard. My sister got married in the church. So I do have a lot of feeling for Shrewsbury, a lot of sympathy with Shrewsbury. I was there actually on Friday. I stayed from before 3 till after 4 to see the traffic position when the children came out of school. I walked about. There were cars there. But all the time, even at the peak time, there were also spaces available for additional cars to be parked. So whilst I take the point that yes, school, I'm a grandparent, school picking up time is always busy in terms of cars. It's not over busy.
Chair, point of order, please.
Yeah.
We just saw Heather Kidd there. Now, under our rules, the member has to leave the room.
Correct.
If her image, which was just there, is on, that's off-putting for the speakers and contrary to the rules. She's there again.
Did you?
Do you want me to just ask her to turn the camera off?
Yeah.
Could you ask her to turn the camera off? She might be able to hear you.
Could you turn your camera off, please, Ella? Thank you.
I'm sorry, did I lose a few seconds there? But I don't need a lot of time. As I say, I'm not a planning person. I'm not an architect. I would like to see my aunt's old bungalow, which is now virtually derelict. I would like to see 2 good quality family homes. That's what the proposal is. 2 good quality family homes in the centre of Shrewsbury. Shrewsbury's changed a lot since my aunt first moved in, since I used to go there in the 50s and 60s. Tower has been built more significantly. The Smithy Gardens used to be gardens. There's now, I think, 5 dwellings there. So either side of this site, there has been development. And now it's time to replace my aunt's bungalow with 2 good quality family homes. And I hope the committee will grant the application. Thank you.
Any questions, please? Councillor Towers.
Yes, Mr. Weeks. To the page before us, 6.2.1, it says the minutes of the committee decision on the application state that members considered single-storey properties were more suitable on the site and wish this to be conveyed to the applicant. Officers provided the committee minutes to the applicant. The scheme remains for the 2-storey properties, and as such, officers need to appraise the scheme before them. Can you explain, you've been given that information, why this has come back as a 2-storey application?
Yes. I don't like the idea of bungalows on that site because their footprint would be much greater to give the similar level of accommodation. I think bungalows, frankly, on that site would be inappropriate and undesirable. So I'm not going to put forward an application. Thank you.
I do agree with Heather about the height of the building. Couldn't they be 1.5 stories instead of that great big roof stuck on the top? Because, you know, if you look at more in keeping a 1.5 story building, well, it was a big towering roof. There's extra space in the roof.
I wouldn't, Mr. Chair, I wouldn't describe it as a big towering roof. But what I would ask the committee, please, is to make a decision on the application.
Okay, thank you. Right. Okay, so you can back to your seat now, and I'll open this up to committee. Who would like to speak first, please? Councillor Upper.
Probably repeat what I've said on several occasions, that we should give more weight, more value to local opinion, local parish councils, local members. They live there, they work on behalf of the community, and I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice to disregard some of the views and the opinions from local parish councils. I'm just throwing that into the mix. It seems to be we've been here before. We've said this, and we're now looking at it again. I remain unconvinced as we should support this application.
Thank you. Councillor Lee, please.
Yes, I feel that there's perhaps looks like, to me, looks to be overdeveloped. I would rather see a
reduction in the height of the proposed properties and perhaps a couple of semi-detached properties on the site. I don't like the proposed brickwork either. I don't think it blends in with the surroundings, and I'm minded to reject this application.
Thank you. Councillor Boddington, please.
Yes, I'm also minded to reject, particularly the impact on the views of the church, this question of height and it being overbearing on adjacent properties. We did say, I mean, we did discuss this before, and we did say bungalows, and maybe, you know, going up another half a story might be acceptable. But we did that because we took into account the particular locality of this site. And I'll certainly be voting to reject this application.
Councillor Hignett, please.
Chair, I mean, looking at the plan in front of us, when we looked at this, the principle of development for 2 properties on that site has been accepted. We asked for a heritage impact assessment, which has come back, and they are now in favour, or they're not objecting to it. And we also suggested that a 1-storey bungalow would be better. But when you look at the size of that site, I think it would be difficult to fit 2 bungalows onto that site unless you're going to reduce them down to perhaps effectively 1 bedroom, a sort of bed sits, or maybe 2, I don't know. It's possible maybe 1.5 stories, but we are here sitting today to try and look at the planning application in front of us. And I understand that the parish council and the local member are not in favour of this. I can understand the problem with the height of it, but I'm finding very little other reason to reject this application apart from the height of the buildings. And I'm not sure whether that's enough.
Okay. Anyone else to speak, please? No. Okay. You want to come back, Don? You want anything? Or?
No.
No. Right. Do I have a proposer, please, for the application? Councillor Boddington?
Thought you might say that. Yeah, I think that we go against the officer's recommendation and reject the application on the grounds of the impact on the views of the church as a heritage asset and the fact that it's overbearing on adjacent properties and out of scale with those adjacent properties. So it's slightly clumsy wording, but as usual, I'm sure officers could tidy that up.
Okay, do I have a second for that, please? Councillor Lee. Like we have a proposal and a seconder to go against the officer's recommendation because of the reasons you've got written there.
Yeah. So the reasons stated just by Councillor Boddington, we've got a proposal to go against the officer recommendation and to refuse the application. If you could indicate whether you're voting for or against, please. Caroline Bagnall.
For.
Andy Boddington.
For.
Nick Hignett.
Against.
Richard Hubner.
For.
Christine Lee.
For.
Hilary Luff.
Against.
Nigel Lumby.
For.
Rachel Crowley.
For.
Edward Towers.
Against.
And David Evans.
For. That's 7 for and 3 against. For refusal. Okay, we go on to item number 9, which is appeals and appeal decisions. I presume you've all seen these. I would imagine these are from noting unless anybody has got the specific issues they wish to raise. Please do so. Okay. Item number 10, date of the next meeting is December the 17th at 2 o'clock. At this building. I'd just like to thank the officers for all the work they put into these applications. I'd like to thank you for turning up today and giving us your time. I'd like to thank everybody involved in this planning committee. I wish you a safe journey home. Thank you.